Welcome to Wise and Wild of America, a series meant to inspire and empower you on your self-discovery and self-authorship journey. I am Adina, and I am thrilled to be here today with someone very, very special, the author and the teacher of a very unique body of spiritual work on dreaming and much more. Welcome, Connie Kaplan.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be with you.
I'm so happy to have you here today. So if you would allow me, I will introduce you twice. So first, in a non-formal way, in just like the raw and experiential and flowing way that it happened to me to come over your body of work. And then I will introduce you formally just to offer some context to our conversation. Does this work?
Okay.
Okay. So we connected quite magically, or I think it's magic. It was a magical experience for me. So this past summer, I was feeling stuck in my writing. I'm writing this novel on the meeting between Shams and Rumi, Shams al-Tabriz and Rumi, the Sufi poet, Shams being the spiritual teacher of Rumi, when I just all of a sudden felt drawn to open your book, Dreams Are Letters from the Soul, which I have here. And I have this book in my library for a while, I think from 2014. I was going to this West Side School of Practical Philosophy, Upper West Side, I think, School of Practical Philosophy, to study the Platonic dialogues. And I just found it in the library. And I said, I must have this book. So this summer, I felt drawn to open it and study it formally. So it opened to the chapter about the crystal cave woman, one of the teachers that you met in your dreams. So interestingly, the chapter I was stuck at was happening inside a cave in which lived a dragon covered with opal stones, very, very similar to the setup of the cave woman. So sacred serendipity, I felt the immediate connection with you, and I felt like I have to read everything you published. So thank you for writing this book and for being who you are. So my first question is related to the crystal cave woman, since she brought us together. So who is the crystal cave woman and what are some of her teachings? And just to offer some context now of who you are formally, allow me to introduce you reading the bio on your website, turtledreamers.com, I believe. So I'm just going to read because I think this will provide some context for my question about the cave woman. So Connie Kaplan is a spiritual mentor who lives in Southern California. She holds an undergraduate degree in English, a master's in radio, television, and film production, a second master's in psychology, and a doctorate in ministry. Raised in Texas as a minister's daughter, spirituality has been an important foundation for Kaplan's life. She spent her first 25 years actively involved in traditional religion. In her mid-20s, she began to explore other spiritual systems. However, as a career choice, she went into television production, spending 15 years working as a script supervisor and an associate director. In her early 30s, she reached what one might call the American dream. She was married to a wonderful man, a television executive producer. She had a healthy, beautiful family, a great house in a great neighborhood, and an enviable career that offered her plenty of options for time off to be a mom. In the late 1986, she was suddenly struck with a mysterious virus, which rendered her almost helpless for 2 years. During this time, unable to work and incapable of handling normal life circumstances, she experienced a profound spiritual transformation, which altered not only her inner experience of life, but her outer expression of life. While she slept her life away, she dreamed herself awake. Since the early 90s, when Kaplan was able to return to the normal world, she has devoted herself to sharing what she learned during this mystical awakening. She teaches dreaming as a spiritual practice and a unique form of theology which centers around an understanding of each person's life purpose. She counsels with modern-day mystics. So back to the question about the crystal cave woman.
So during that period of time that you just mentioned when I was asleep, from like about 1986 to late 88, I was mostly asleep. I mean, I literally wasn't in a coma, but I slept 15, 18 hours a day. And I had been in Jungian analysis maybe 10 years or prior to that. So I had developed a pattern, a habit of writing my dreams down. And so during that time when I was sleeping so much, I only had time to make a few notes here and there. But I did do as much journaling as I possibly could during those few awakening hours. And so later, a couple of years later, when I was finally awake, I went back and read my notes, and I noticed that there was this recurring dream. There were several recurring dreams, but this one that we're going to talk about, in which I mentioned a woman named Crystal Cave. I named her Crystal Cave Woman because every time I had a dream about her, she would gather up a group of us, all women, and she would take us into a cave that was made out of crystals. It was sort of a glowing cave because it was made out of crystals. But there were paintings, there were drawings on the wall. And she would give us tools and have us reproduce those drawings on paper with using pens or pencils or charcoal or whatever she gave us. And when we reproduced the paintings to her satisfaction, she would wrap us in a like a buffalo hide or something very warm, and we could take a nap. So that was like the treat, was being able to take a nap in the dream. And as we would lie down to go to sleep, she would point out the mouth of the cave, and there would be the full moon. And so we would go to sleep into that second layer of dreaming while staring at the full moon. Well, I thought that was curious because it always had the same theme. Every dream that I had the same theme. And I had fortunately dated those journal entries. And so I went back and got a lunar calendar and checked. And sure enough, Crystal Cave Woman showed up on a full moon every month for 13 straight months during that sleeping period of mine. So that really set me off on a whole new exploration of dreaming. It's like, all right, somehow the moon has a lot to do with what the dream is. The moon is our night guide into the dream weave. So I started exploring how when the moon is in certain signs, when the moon is in certain phases, when the moon is aspecting certain other planets in the solar system, you have certain types of dreams. And that's the book that you showed up, the 13 types of dreams. Dreams are letters from the soul, outlines the 13 different types of dreams that I was taught that we have based on the location of the moon, the night that you have the dream. And so it's been just an interesting time of teaching and reminding people that the moon, when we lie down on the horizontal plane and become something like part of the skin of the earth, and the gravity in our body, the relationship to gravity changes from when we're on the vertical plane. The moon pulls on our tides, so to speak, just like she does on the earth's tides. And she influences us in the lunar consciousness that we experience while we're asleep.
So after reading your book, of course, I became very interested in who you are, and that's how I discovered your website. And eventually I ended up taking the Dreaming Wisdom course with you this fall. And by the way, this was a dream come true for me because I did not expect that you would offer a experiential, structured course on this. So what struck me most in this class, and my most difficult part to overcome, and I guess I'm not unique in that way, is that you are teaching that the dreamer should recognize the non-personal nature of dreams. So you have here, it says, do not take this personally. And you mentioned Jungian training. So obviously I came to your body of work to understand myself better. And if you want to do some shadow work, if we should use Jungian terms. So that was really difficult for me because you immediately invited me to expand my eye into considering that the dream is really not about me, but it's about us, about exploring the interconnectedness we experience while we are dreaming, and connect with our what you call lunar consciousness. So what you teach in the Dreaming Wisdom Circle is that each member of the Dreaming Circle brings down gifts from the etheric world. And I just wanted to ask you in this context, really, what is dreaming and what makes it a spiritual practice?
Most of us in the Western world have been trained to go with the Jungian interpretation of what dreams are. And in fact, in his time, which was just over 100 years ago, it was an important step in the development of human consciousness for us to recognize that there is something other than empirical evidence, that there's something other than the spiritual kinds of things that we do at church and under the tutelage of religion, and also something other than science and empirical evidence. It is this what he called the unconscious. I don't call it unconscious, I call it a different kind of consciousness. But there is this sphere of there's an energetic field around each of us that is unique. And so Jung and Freud both were making a huge contribution to the development of consciousness at the same time that Einstein was making a huge contribution to the development of science. It was a period of extreme growth in human consciousness. So I don't want to in any way indicate that I'm denigrating the work of Carl Jung. However, 100 years later, it is now time for us to expand consciousness further and take it out of the personal realm and into the integral or integrated or interrelated realms. So what I was shown by these various teachers that I experienced when I was asleep for 2 years is that when we go to sleep, partially because of the change in our relationship to gravity, the consciousness in our body also changes because we're not in need of making sure we don't walk into a tree, or we're not having to be so concretely conscious. And so we can allow our consciousness to soften into a much broader field. And so the way we describe it is that consciousness actually, while the body is regenerating itself, and that the reptilian brain is taking care of making sure the body is resting and regenerating, consciousness can then travel into a more collective realm. In our work, we call it the dream wave. Rupert Sheldrake calls it spheres of influence or morphic fields of influence. Thierry Desjardins called it the noosphere. But the point is, there is a non-space, non-time storage unit in consciousness where collective thoughts, collective ideas are stored. And when we travel in that space, what we call travel on the dreamweave, we pick up certain ideas, certain energies. We have certain exchanges with, sometimes with other people, sometimes with just ideas or entities, while we're asleep. And then when we're waking up, the cognitive mental body wants to remember what we've experienced in lunar consciousness. And so the cognitive body writes a story. That story is what we remember and what we call the dream. But that story is already one generation removed from the actual dream, from the actual experience. And what we do when we write that story is pull on our own personal lexicon of experiences and feelings and people and places and architecture and archetypes. We pull on our personal experience to write that story, which is what makes the dream seem like it's a personal experience. But it's actually, by the time we get it written down and or spoken, it's 2 or 3 generations removed from an actual energetic or spiritually or spirituo energetic experience that we have when we're in expanded consciousness.
And I think this energetic experience is really what connected me to your body of work. I think books are carrying that imprint, and they are kind of like living spirits, and that's how the connection with your body of work functioned for me. And just to tell you something even more interesting, if you look at this notebook, it says, if you can dream it, you can do it. It's a quote from Walt Disney. Just before, like the Christmas before I was drawn to open your book, I received this gift from my husband, and I never felt called to write in it until I started this with you. And then I started to keep my dream journal here. So yeah, that's how the universe, I guess, works, through this law of co-interaction and attraction. So you write in your book that these revelations and teachings about dreaming came after this illness, this mysterious virus. So can you please talk about this sudden transition in your life a bit more? And do you think you became a mystic because of this experience, or rather you were already born a mystic, and I guess you had to arrive to the realization through this experience?
I think we're all born mystics. I mean, if you've ever been around a little kid, prior to when they start to school and get it all trained out of them, they see things, they hear things, we call it imagine things that the rest of us can't see, hear, and imagine. And so what we do with children is be sure to train that out of them, because it's unacceptable for you to come in and tell me about the spirits that you just saw in the garden, right? So I think we're all born mystics. Somewhere in that book, Dreams Are Letters from the Soul, I don't know the exact page off the top of my head, but there's a conversation, a conversation that I had with Crystal Cave Woman. And what she said to me was, the reason you're receiving this information is because you chose to listen. If you choose to listen, you will be told. I can't say that I exactly sat down and chose to listen one day, but I can say that I got zonked. My brain got rewired. I mean, literally, when I was in that period, I couldn't remember how to get a phone to stop ringing or what that doorbell thing meant. So some synapses got rewired in me, and I had no real option but to listen. I suppose I could have chosen to interpret it differently. I could have chosen to be afraid. I could have chosen to spend those 2 years in the doctor's office trying to find out what's wrong with me. I could have not heard it as a mystical body of information that was coming through me. But I don't know if I'm evading your question or not. The thing that changed was I was no longer competent to function in the world the way you have to function to hold down a job and be, be that person. I woke up a different person 2 years later. I became that person who heard information, sometimes when I'm asleep, sometimes when I'm awake. And then I had just enough of the need for empirical evidence left in me that I tested it. I gathered dream circles in my house and we tested the work, and we charted our dreams, and we looked at the patterns that showed up, because yes, indeed, when the moon is aspecting Mercury in my life, I get a very certain kind of dream. But when it's aspecting Mercury in somebody else's life, they get a completely different kind of dream. So that's it's a system that has to be researched. We can do it together, but it also has to be researched by the individual dreamer, which is why I teach the dreaming class the way I do. It's like immersion into what it is to explore lunar consciousness for yourself while being in community.
So what I really hear there is surrender. So a mystic journey is about surrender and listening, which is very important, because so often we try to control our experience and try to fit it in just a template of whatever we think it's the truth, instead of just sitting there and listening and receiving, which I think it's so powerful. And so what you just mentioned about patterns and lunar phases and different planets aspecting the moon really brings me to my next question. This observational work, body of work, paradoxically, somehow you say this is a non-personal experience, but you are still looking at the astral chart of each dreamer and see what kind of message and what's the meaning for each dreamer in that context, in the specific day when the dream happens. So can you please explain a bit more about the connection between a dreamer's astral chart and the gift that is bringing to a circle?
Well, each person, when you take that first breath, you are at a very specific place on Gaia. You're at a very specific place on the earth. And the planets are all in a very specific place in the sky above you or around you, right? And so each person has a unique geometric relationship to the solar system. That unique geometric relationship is what makes me a unique person. And when I take that first breath, what happens is the toric field around me memorizes the power that each one of those planets, wherever they were in that moment, or the power, the influence, the support that planet sort of pledged to me as an individual, unique person. So when I'm looking at the dreams, I'm looking at where the planets are, specifically where the moon is and where it is in relation to the other planets, to see how that applies not to me, but to the unique configuration of energy that is me. So my my dream that I have on a certain night or under certain lunar influences will be amplified, colored, accessorized by my unique configuration of energy. But that doesn't mean that the dream is about me. It means that my way of telling this story to you is going to be different than someone else's. So that's why we work in circles, because each dreamer has a contribution based on her unique configuration of energy, his or her unique configuration of energy. But that doesn't mean that each dream is only about that dreamer. If I pick up information about something that's coming. One of the types of dreams that I describe in that book that you're talking about, Dreams of Letters from Soul, is clairvoyant dreaming or prophetic dreaming. If I dream about something and I share it with Dream Circle, and then a few days later it actually happens in some way, my sharing of it came through my own interpretation of what I experienced in lunar consciousness. But that doesn't mean that it was just all about me. It could very well have been a dream about someone else or something else that's coming.
As you like to say in the Dreaming Circle class, birth is one of the most important events that happened in someone's life. And as we share these dreams, we are well aware of all the members, or we can look at all the members' astral chart. And I think this is very helpful because we understand this dream in the context of whatever that first imprint is on each dreamer's life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the next question is about one of my favorite topics, and the topic that brought me to you, which is Rumi's poem. So I know that we both love Rumi's poems, and you two are fascinated by Rumi's mystical relationship with his spiritual teacher, Shams of Tabriz. So let's talk a bit about mystical connections and initiation. In this case, initiation into dreaming wisdom. Is this practice open to everyone who is interested in it? And how does it work? And what would be some of the benefits of keeping, for example, a dream journal or joining a dream circle?
Well, the main benefit of joining a dream circle is that you get over your belief that you are the interpreter of your own dream. You're going to hear that from practically every other dreaming teacher in the world. Only you can interpret your dream. And that's almost the opposite of what I was shown while I was asleep, which is that you can't interpret your own dream, because what you will do is say, this is about me, and I did this and I did that, and I should do this and I should do that, and it's all about me. And you'll miss the cosmic and cultural message of the dream because we're just too myopic to interpret our own dream. So that's the advantage of being in a dream circle. Regarding your question, is it available to everyone? It is, of course, available to everyone because everyone dreams, but you have to be a kind of a special person to work well with this kind of dreaming, because you have to be willing to put away your belief systems that you've been taught. And, like, as you said, that's the hardest part, especially when people come to me and say, I know a lot about astrology and I know a lot about Jungian analysis. I'm like, this may not be the right place for you, because it's going to require that you put so much of that aside in order to hear this is radically different teaching. And most people don't really want to put aside what they think they already know. It feels vulnerable to do that, to try to come to a system with beginner mind. So it is, of course, available to anybody who wants to study it. The books are out there, and my classes are open to anybody who wants to sign up for them. I don't know anyone else who's actually teaching my system, because most people, I don't know if anybody else is doing it. There may be some people who are doing it that I just don't know about. There are some people I know in Poland, for example. The book was translated into Polish, and I hear pretty often from people in Poland who are doing something similar. The book's also been published in French, and so I hear. In fact, I have a very nice, lovely student in France who assures me periodically that he's doing, this kind of work. So I think it's kind of creeping out into other cultures, but it takes a long time for a brand new idea, a brand new paradigm to take hold. Even like after Copernicus proved mathematically that the earth goes around the sun rather than the sun going around the earth, it was still 300 years before the church agreed that that was true, right? So it takes a while for something this radical and this new to take hold.
Well, I can testify that this is a very, at the same time, humbling, but also connecting experience. And I think living these times where everything is about me, 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 and nothing is about us, I think this is really contributing to a shift in consciousness as a planetary scale, because we can see the disasters we are going at the planetary level, from the climate change to all these different shifts that happen. So I think we are transitioning to a time where we will have to be thinking as a community rather than individual teenagers in our humanity evolution. So let me ask you about this interesting phenomena that I witnessed in your circle so many times. So what do you think? How does this happen that when someone who's a part of the dreaming circle brings the gift of a certain type of dream, and we do share 2 to 4 dreams in a dreaming circle each time we meet, how does it happen that without independently of knowing of what the other will share, everyone will pick a dream on a similar theme? So just to give an example, one time I shared this dream I had about a conversation with this man who designed a very intricate embroidery, while you shared your dream of connection with a man with whom you're making a film. So what is this common theme phenomenon, and why is it important to acknowledge it, which we typically do at the end of our dream sharing circle?
Well, this is part of what I'm saying about what is so radical about this work. We believe, and in spite of all evidence to the contrary, for some reason, we believe that we are we believe that dreams are private. We believe that our thoughts are private. We believe that we are the generators of our own thoughts and our own dreams, and we're just not. And so that's part of what happens in Dream Circle when the way I say it is that if a dream tells you it wants to come to circle, then bring it to circle. And I don't know how to go about saying the dream tells you, but you just kind of know, all right, this is a dream that I need to share in circle. And you do, and you're right, it is phenomenal how often that dream fits like a glove with the other 2 or 3 dreams that that wanted to come to circle that night. Speaking of humbling, it is a recognition that our thoughts and our dreams and our instructions about what to do are coming from a collective space, from a bigger space than just our heads. We are not in full control of everything that we're responsible for everything that we do, but we're not in control of what comes to us to be done. So yeah, one of the very first experiences I had like that was slightly different, but it was early on when I was first teaching the dreaming work, and a woman came to circle and she shared a dream about the death of her father, the funeral of her father. And she saw her father in his casket, and she saw the color of his tie and the color of his shirt and the color of the lining of his casket. And she was very emotional about sharing this dream because he wasn't dead. Her father wasn't dead. And so she was wondering if she was prophesying the death of her father. And she could barely get it out. She was so emotional about it. There were 13 women in the circle that night. And as we passed the stone around to feedback to her, what message we may have heard from her story, it turns out that 8 of us in that circle had dreamed about the death of our fathers in the last 2 weeks. So some of us, our fathers were dead. Some of us, our fathers were not dead, but 8 people had also dreamed about the death of their fathers during during the period of time between the last time we met at Circle and this time. And so suddenly the conversation moved from the death of individual human beings to the death of the patriarchy and what is necessary for us to do to embrace it, engage it, grieve it properly, and let it be the transformation that we knew that we were all coming toward. So magical things like that happen almost every time we have a circle. Magical and archetypically mythical. And so that's one thing that I want to emphasize. Yes, we're evolving to a new thing, and studying this kind of work is going to help us as individuals and then as people in our sphere of influence make that evolutionary shift. And we're also reintegrating ancient history. I mean, our ancestors dreamt like this. They shared their dreams with each other. They went out and looked at the stars and connected dots in the sky and made stories about them. So we're kind of reintegrating. We're kind of getting over our mental, rational obsession with our brains and reintegrating a much deeper, more ancient, more holistic sense of what it is to be human.
So beautiful. And I have to compliment you here for your wonderful choice in quotes for all of your books. So, for example, I cannot lie, this is one of the main things that attracted me to your work. So you open the Dreams Are Letter of the Soul with this quote from Hafez, which is one of my favorite poets. There is no one in this world who is not looking for God. And in your book, The Invisible Garment, which I also read in an ebook format, I cannot show it here. You say you introduce this beautiful quote from Laila. My teacher told me one thing: live in the soul. When that was so, I began to go naked. So is dreaming similar to poetry? So after all, they both connect us to the world soul with this bigger aspect of our consciousness by letting go of the ego mind.
I was having a conversation with someone just today about that whole thing. Letting go of the ego. Well, let me do it this way. One of the spiritual principles that the angels have brought to me to teach is the spiritual principle of humility. And one of the statements they made about humility is, it is equally arrogant to think too little of yourself as it is to think too much of yourself. That's the definition of humility. Those spiritual systems that teach letting go of the ego are actually saying, don't think too much of yourself. This spiritual system that I teach is also saying, and know yourself so thoroughly that you don't think too little of yourself. Know exactly who you are and let the principles that are the shining light of your own configuration shine through. Now I forgot what I was saying. I hate when you forget what you're saying while you're saying it. That thing that Lila, one of the teachings here in this radical system that I teach is we're not a one man, one soul world. We love to think that we have a soul, that I have a soul that's different from your soul. That is us projecting our belief that we're separate, right? If I'm separate from you, I must surely have a separate soul from you. A, we're not separate, and B, in this teaching, there is only one soul, and each of us is an emissary from that soul. And to the extent that we can be clear of our lies, we can walk naked in the presence. And by naked, I'm speaking of metaphorically, I can be completely transparent. I can be diaphanous to you. You can look at me, and if you have the eyes to see, you can see everything that is speaking to you from my sphere of influence and vice versa. That's where we're going as a species. Probably not in my lifetime we're going to get there, but that's where we're going. And that's why everything else is crumbling. All of our projections and all of our control issues and all of our beliefs about rules and how things should be and how you should obey me and you should agree with me, all of that is falling apart. We're watching it crumble in front of us, and we're seeing what devastating results we can evoke by demanding that we live in that kind of mental, rational, Enlightenment age lie, right? So this work is a very, very gentle way of saying, no, let's reintegrate all of who we are, all of who we have been for the last, what is it, 600 million years or something it's taken us to get here. And that's what that quotation was about, I think. I can walk naked and therefore be invulnerable.
So since you are arriving to this naked moment and you mentioned the angels, I was not going to ask you about your encounter with the angels, but since we are here talking about this, can you briefly talk about your experience with encountering the angels and what do you think your mission is?
As a part of this awakening to the mystic aspect of what my incarnation is about, I was at my father's deathbed, and I was, I was sitting there with my dying dad, and these two angels walked into the room, and it was a real conflict of belief for me because I didn't believe in angels. So it's like, I'm seeing something here. I'm having this experience here, and I can either deny it, because I could have just turned around and pretended they weren't there, I think, or I can go with it. And I went with it. And basically, in a nutshell, what they said was most humans do not know what an incarnation is. Most humans think that you're here to do something or learn something or produce something or create karma or pay for karma or whatever. And it's none of that. That each human is here to deliver a gift from the level of soul, the one soul, into the realm of form. You are the gift. You're here to be a gift, a physiological, biological unit that is gifting the world with the spiritual information that is dominant in your own system. And so they said, we need you to teach that. And, that was a pretty big, I'm like, who am I? I'm nobody, and they just said, write it down and we'll send you the people that need to know it. And so that was 37 years ago, that was about 30 years ago. That was 30 years ago. And they've been faithful to sending me the people who know it. I don't advertise. I don't have a PR person, but every time I offer a class, it fills up. And so I just have to trust that's my mission, is to teach what they asked me to share.
And you are the gift for many of us, and your books are the gift. So if more people need to find you, how can they do so?
Well, the best way is to, you mentioned the website, turtledreamers.com, but I have another website called theinvisiblegarment.com. That's the name of my book that I wrote after the angels encountered me, the invisible garment. It's a reference to the fact that when we take that first breath, there are certain spiritual principles that wrap around us like a swaddling cloth. They become the invisible garment. They become what you can see when I'm walking naked. So theinvisiblegarment.com, it will tell you, it will give you ways to get in touch with me. And there's also just tons of free information there about these teachings. So thank you for that little plug. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being with me here today. I'm so grateful for your books, for your teachings, and definitely looking forward to work more with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you. You're a great interviewer. Thank you.